in the beginning of 2023, Oracle decided they're going to change the way that they price for Oracle Java to an employee-based pricing. So regardless of how much Java is being used in an enterprise, that enterprise will pay based on its number of employees and contractors, both full-time and part-time, and frankly, very nonsensical way of asking an enterprise to pay for something regardless of use. And really the employee size that a company has is very unrelated to the amount of Java. We see very small companies use massive amounts of Java, and we see very, very large companies that have very little use of Java. So it's very uncorrelated, and really the entire Java community has been up in arms since that announcement. And again, one of the things that's really fueling the migration away from the use of Oracle Java to OpenJDK-based alternatives like Azul provides.
Hi, this is your host Sapnil Bhartia, and welcome to TFR Let's Talk. And today we have with us once again Scott Sellers, CEO and co-founder of Azul. And today we are going to talk about Azul 2025 State of Java survey. Scott, can you please talk about what is the idea behind this survey?
Thank you, First Swap, for having me on again. It's great to see you, and we're excited about talking about the 2025 State of Java survey. One of the things that we're always trying to do as the only vendor that's 100% focused on Java is really try to get a pulse of the Java community. And of course, a lot of that is spent with customers and prospects and constantly trying to learn more about how our customers and prospects are using Java and where Java is headed, and constantly thinking about how our products can better serve our customers. But obviously, we use surveys to also learn about the Java market, the directions of Java, how people are using Java, etc. And this is the second year that we've conducted a survey along with our partner, Dimensional Research. And like I mentioned, I think the results are really everything has to be taken with a grain of salt, of course, because it's a survey. But certainly, as you look from year over year and kind of look at this and the results relative to what we see daily interacting with our customers and prospects, you certainly can get a general sense directionally of how people are using Java, the successes and challenges they have, and ultimately kind of the general direction of the market.
Can you talk about who were the target, audience, or who participated in this survey?
It's generally targeted towards let's say DevOps professionals. So these are developers at various size organizations. I believe the majority, and the data is in the report, of course, but I think the majority of respondents are in organizations that are kind of around 1,000 employees in size. So good size companies in general. It's a lot of developers. It's a lot of those that are involved with managing developer teams. Some are responsible for operating Java-based applications or Java-based infrastructure. So ultimately, what we were looking for was respondents whose daily lives, if you will, in some way, shape, or form are using Java or Java-based infrastructure.
Now let's talk about, according to you, what are the key findings, highlights of this survey and report?
First, the thing that I thought was very interesting was that even unfiltered, 99% of the people that were contacted to participate in the survey, and ultimately there were over 2,000 respondents, I believe. So very good numbers statistically. 99% say they do use Java, in their kind of daily work lives, etc. So that was a very telling stat in and of itself in terms of the popularity and the ubiquity of Java. And so certainly that came out front and center. Some of the big findings, that came out from the survey overall, was that we talked about this in other interviews as well, but there is a shift in terms of the preference for open source versions of Java and the Java runtime. Certainly, even dating back to the days when Sun was the primary provider of Java. Oracle, of course, bought Sun in 2009, and Oracle's kind of taken the catbird seat in that position, if you will. But over the years since that happened, more and more users are switching from instead of using the Oracle Java, they're using distributions based on OpenJDK, and this is a strong trend that continues. In fact, in this particular survey, 88% of those that were still using Oracle Java are considering moving to another provider based on open source, based on OpenJDK. So that was certainly a very telling stat that talks about just sort of, within the Java world, what version of the Java runtime is being used. And there are also some other fascinating stats we can jump into that talk about the types of libraries and frameworks that are being used in Java, the life of a daily Java developer, and how security and security vulnerabilities are impacting their job, how unused code, dead code, if you will, still has to be maintained, but ultimately is very inefficient. We learned about the use of Java and how Java's being used in the context of AI features and capabilities that are being added to Java. And then we learned also a lot about how Java is being used in the cloud. So the survey is quite broad in terms of the types of topics that we dive into. And, there's tons of data in the report and statting all these different things.
Are there any things, like a lot of things were there that you were expecting, as you said, it's a second survey and being in the market space, where things are heading, but was there anything that surprised even you?
There were actually. One of the things that was amazing is Log4j, of course, which was a very, well publicized security vulnerability in one of the most popular Java logging frameworks called Log4j. The survey cites, or the respondents cited, that almost 49% of them, so almost half, still have Log4j security issues that they are wrestling with. So we're 2+ years, I think maybe even 3 years now, beyond when Log4j vulnerability was first disclosed. And it shows how challenging addressing security vulnerabilities are to truly, knock out those versions of Log4j which are vulnerable and make those upgrades to make the infrastructure more secure. So that was certainly a surprise as to what a long tail a critical vulnerability like that can actually take. We were also surprised to hear that in terms of we did some new questions this year that talked about where time is being spent by developers. And one of the stats I thought that was a little surprising was that 33%, so a third of respondents, spend half their time chasing what's called false positives for security vulnerabilities. And a false positive means that a tool or a scanner says that a vulnerability exists in your application, but in fact that code is not used, it's not actually called, and so it says it's a vulnerability, but in actual practice it's not. And so those are very costly hours that are being spent if developers are spending time getting their applications to upgrade areas in their code that actually are not truly vulnerable. That's certainly a waste of time. So 33% of the respondents cited that they're using their time to chase false positives. So 33% are spending more than half their time chasing false positives. So that's a significant amount of lost time. And the other stat that was interesting, I'm not sure surprising, but certainly interesting, was that 41% encounter critical production security issues on a daily or weekly basis. So it does jump out at you that the security is just not this hypothetical issue that the media wants to talk about, or hypothetical dangers. It really does impact the productivity developers, and companies are paying money for it. We actually have a prospect that is using our intelligence cloud tool, and when they looked at the amount of time that they were spent chasing false positive security false positives under security vulnerabilities, and also updating things like dead and unused code, they mapped it back to almost 30 full-time engineers' time, so like 60,000 hours of developer time was spent, chasing these things that ultimately didn't even matter. So those were some really interesting results that we saw coming out of the survey in terms of just more about developer productivity and where time is being spent and ultimately time in certain cases is being wasted.
And when we talk about wasted time, how does it translate to cost also? Because we are becoming cost sensitive as well. Cloud costs, especially, how much was that concerned there?
Yeah, I mean, cloud, the use of cloud in general, was actually fascinating to see. We like we did in the survey a year ago, trying to get a sense of the prevalence of Java in cloud and how companies are wrestling with rising cloud costs. There's many surveys that talk about disillusionment, if you will, of cloud overspend and these types of things. But in our specific survey this year, we talked about the prevalence of Java in the cloud and that kind of dynamic. So one of the stats that came out that I thought was really interesting was that 65% of their respondents say that more than half of their cloud compute bills are associated with Java or Java-based workloads. So it basically says there's a lot of cloud spend that's being associated with Java applications or Java-based workload. And so that again is a testament to the ubiquity of Java and how much it really drives so much infrastructure today. We also the results showed that over 70% state that more than 20% of their cloud cost of their cloud compute infrastructure is unused. So it's a large majority have more than 20% of their cloud capacity that they're paying for, but they're not actually using. So that speaks to inefficiency, that those dollars could be used for a lot more practical things if, and it's a big if, organizations can really get their heads around how to better optimize their cloud spend through practices like FinOps is an emerging practice now, which helps developers, operators map specific applications to cloud spend, specific use cases to cloud spend, so that they can better direct and optimize how companies and specific business units, specific application owners are spending money in the cloud. We're seeing use of more modern processors, for example, in the Amazon cloud. Amazon has their own ARM64 based processors that they call Graviton, and we're seeing a strong trend towards those Graviton processors that ultimately have a more compelling price performance relative to x86 processors that historically have been used. We're also the respondents cited heavy use of high performance Java runtimes. So these are Java runtimes like, for example, Azul provides, that if you're able to run your applications faster in a more scalable, more deterministic manner, you can use less cloud compute. And so, factors of using FinOps practices, using more modern processors like ARM64, using high performance Java runtimes, these are all the tools and techniques that that operators and DevOps teams are using to try to squash this issue that over 20% in many cases of their cloud compute is actually not being used.
Excellent, thank you. Now there are two I want to draw a kind of contrast here. One is that I also want to look at the emerging either technologies like AI. And also I want to talk about, we had a discussion last year as well with Oracle's license changing and pricing, and customers were concerned, right? Did you try to also get pulse on what is the ecosystem saying about these two different things? Now I want to talk about two things. One is emerging technologies like AI, Gen AI, and then a couple of years ago when Oracle changed its license, did you folks try to get a pulse on how the Java community, how users are looking at these two developments?
We did, yes, and so certainly with the interest in AI, it feels like you can't even read anything these days without mention of AI, certainly in the tech space. And so We did some polling this year that we hadn't done the year prior, so it's new data, and we'll continue to track and trend this as the survey evolves over the years. But first and foremost, just really understanding, how often Java is used in the context of developing applications that have AI or ML features and capabilities. And this is one of the, I guess you could say it was a surprise, because oftentimes when you hear about AI in general and the use of developer languages with AI, oftentimes you hear languages like Python commonly being referenced as commonly used when developing AI features and capabilities. One of the things that came out very strongly in this survey was that over half the developers, 50% plus, are actually using Java to develop AI or ML capabilities and features in their applications. And so I think that certainly, again, was a strong testament to the popularity of Java. Java, over the last several releases of the platform, has continued to evolve the capabilities that make Java that much more, let's say, easier and more efficient to be able to, call into GPU libraries and other types of compute infrastructure that are often used to perform, whether it's some sort of AI training or AI inference, etc. So I thought that was a really interesting part of the story. We talked about cloud before and cloud spend. One of the other stats that we asked about was the expectation about where do they expect cloud spend to go because of additional AI features and capabilities that are being added in their applications. And again, over 70% said that they expected their cloud compute spend to grow because of the need to add AI capabilities and features in their applications. And so that really came out very strongly, that despite the understanding of cloud spend is higher than expected or desired, cloud budgets consistently are over budget. There's all this unused compute capacity that we talked about. Despite all of that, 70+% still expect that compute spending in the cloud will grow because of AI. So all that was, certainly paints a picture, I think, of not only the interest and the growth of AI in general, but Java also being a big part of that. So that was certainly very interesting. On your other question with regard to Oracle and pricing, as we did last year, we certainly surveyed to get the pulse of the opinion about why people are considering moving off Oracle Java to other primarily open source offerings based on OpenJDK like Azul's offerings. And again, it came across very strongly that the primary reason that people are moving, 82% in fact are concerned about Oracle's pricing. And early in 2023 now, so we just crossed the 2-year anniversary of a major price change that Oracle announced, where they moved away from older, kind of more sensical models that is based on the more Java an enterprise used, the more they paid. That makes sense. That's kind of how traditional software is priced. In the beginning of 2023, Oracle decided they're going to change the way that they price for Oracle Java to an employee-based pricing. So regardless of how much Java is being used in an enterprise, that enterprise will pay based on its number of employees and contractors, both full-time and part-time. And frankly, very nonsensical way of asking an enterprise to pay for something regardless of use. And really the employee size that a company has is very unrelated to the amount of Java. We see very small companies use massive amounts of Java, and we see very, very large companies that have very little use of Java. So it's very uncorrelated, and really the entire Java community has been up in arms since that announcement. And again, one of the things that's really fueling the migration away from the use of Oracle Java to OpenJDK-based alternatives like Azul provides.
How are organizations tackling with the DevOps productivity and efficiency right now? And of course, then we will ask how Azul can further empower them.
I guess I'd call it an emerging set. I mean, it's not new, but there definitely is a market that is continuing to grow that is very focused on developer productivity, and they're tools that allow for development teams to be able to better metric and track developer productivity. And there's many companies in this space, long debates about exactly how you do that, what metrics and KPIs matter in terms of really assessing how developers are productive. But the more important point there is that there is a higher emphasis now on really understanding the use of developers' time and how efficient they really are. In most organizations, the number one costs are headcount in organizations that are developing applications. And so developers' time is truly precious, and any time that can be considered wasteful or not as efficient as it could be is an opportunity to be able to improve the overall efficiency, if you will, of a developer, set of developers, and development team, and development organization, et cetera. And so not only are tools now available that try to track developer productivity, there's also many tools available that actually allow developers to do something about that. And Azul has a product called our Intelligence Cloud product, which does exactly that. And ultimately, what it allows developers to do is to really stop wasting time pursuing and fixing security vulnerabilities that are actually not being called and used in production. So this false positive problem that I referenced before, where over a third of the respondents in our survey say that they spend over half their time chasing false positive security vulnerabilities, that's a terrible loss of efficiency. So the Intelligence Cloud products allows them to, and I'm not just, it's not an overstatement, literally by an order of magnitude, reduce the number of security vulnerability alerts by differentiating the output that comes from traditional security tools and scanners, that is just this long list, never-ending list of vulnerabilities that might exist in an application bundle, in a container, in a jar, as an application is released to production. It's not particularly helpful to give this never-ending list of vulnerabilities if that code is never actually called. And so what the Intelligence Cloud product does is actually provide the information to the developer about what code is actually called in production, so not in a hypothetical, but actually in real production workloads. Provide that information back to the developer so they can only focus on those vulnerabilities that have high CVEs, so they're truly at risk in terms of being exploited, but also are actually being run. And so being able to reduce the number of alerts by 10x and more, separating the false positives from the true positives, has a huge impact on overall developer productivity. The other aspect that the Intelligence Cloud product provides is helping developers understand which code is actually run in production. So similar to how we help developers stop chasing false positives from a security perspective, we also help developers stop wasting time updating code that is not actually used in production. So again, this capability to take production workloads and without impacting performance in any way, being able to provide that information back to developers. And we've seen some significant examples where over 2/3 of code in many cases is never called in production, and yet developers are constantly updating the entire code base. So they're spending an enormous amount of time updating the majority of their application of code base that's never actually used. Obviously, that's very, very inefficient. And so, in days like this where cost really matters, developer productivity really matters, tools like Intelligence Cloud are helping developer teams really improve their productivity and allow for more effective developer organizations.
Scott, thank you so much for joining me and talk about this survey and report. Thanks for great insight. And as usual, I look forward to have you back on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Swap. Very much appreciate your time and enjoy the opportunity to talk about our 2025 State of Java survey.